Hi everyone, Brian from StreetSnappers here. And what strange times we find ourselves in. And wherever you are in the world, I hope you're managing to stay safe and free from this dreaded virus. And if you're like me, you're probably in a lockdown situation right now, where street photography is either impossible or inadvisable. And what do? We've got to stay safe. We've got to stay indoors. There are actually things we can do, and I think we should be using this time really productively. So stay tuned and I'll tell you exactly what I'm going to do during this lockdown. So I'm determined that I'm going to use this time wisely and I'm not going to be beaten by this thing. So I made a checklist of 20 activities which will help me as a street photographer emerge from this situation, maybe in a slightly better place. So here goes. Tip number one, take stock. Have a look at all your images. Go through your archive. Have a look through all those hard drives, through all those shelves full of files with negative sleeves, and all those lever arch files with sheets of negatives and old prints, and really analyse it. And looking at your old work in this way, where there's some distance between the taking of the image and the viewing of it, it helps us see our images dispassionately and maybe in a fresh light. So I'll be looking for patterns or trends. Maybe there's enough material to form a project, or maybe there's something which will give me the idea to kickstart a new project once I can get out there and start shooting, once conditions have improved. More on projects later. I'll also take this opportunity to sort out my archive. This in itself can be enormously satisfying and quite therapeutic to have a kind of image declutter. So tip number two, make art. Look at the walls around you in your home and look at the images you've got on display. Are some of them starting to look a bit tired, maybe a bit bleached by the sun? Maybe you're fed up with looking at them. They've been there for a long time, and maybe some of your recent work is actually a lot better. So whether you print your own work or send it off to a lab, this could be a really good time to get printing and to bring some of these images to life. I'm certainly going to be refreshing the walls in my room. Tip number three, create a book. And if you're anything like me, you've always got some ideas, some projects on the go for bookmaking, and we're all about to make a book. And I've always got 3 or 4 ideas that I really want to bring to life. So with the benefit of all this time on my hands, do you know what? I'm going to do it. I can just really get stuck into thinking about some good books. If you're new to bookmaking, then there are some really good online services that really make this very easy and cost-effective and user-friendly. And blurb.com is a good starting point if you are new to this. And I will pop a link below. Tip number 4, I'll reorganize my workspace at home. And oh my goodness, this is a big one for me. My workspace is always a mess, and I'm quite lucky because I've got quite a big loft space dedicated for photography. And most of us have some kind of a little workspace, whether it's a proper office or just a table in the corner or a desk or maybe just a shelf. But most of us have something that we call our kind of photography space. And boy, does it get out of hand. Mine is always a mess. I'm always having to throw stuff out, to declutter. But I'm now doing it in a much more concerted way, where I'm finding new homes for things. I'm chucking loads of stuff out. I've got a box in the corner that is for the charity shop once we can get out there and the shops are open again. I painted one of the walls a new colour and just give the place a nice spring clean. And it's just a great feeling. It makes me want to be in here and do stuff again. So tip number 5, do a gear audit. And if you're anything like me, you will have drawers stuffed with things that you'll never use again. Old bags, lenses with the wrong mount, incompatible flashes, scratched filters, old instruction manuals, straps. I found all kinds of stuff in my loft, and it's junk that just had to go. I'll never use it again. But the good news is that there's a buyer out there for just about everything. And most of the gear you've got, even damaged stuff that you don't need anymore, will sell. Get it on eBay. Alternatively, the charity shop, or something like the excellent Disabled Photographer Society. But now is the time to be really brutal and just get rid of all this stuff you don't need. You will thank yourself later on. It's a really good cathartic exercise. Tip number 6, give your gear a refurb or a deep clean. When we're all out there busy taking pictures, it's easy to neglect this gear, and it's our cameras that seem to attract the dust and dirt in really hard to reach areas, particularly around the dials and the knobs and the buttons, and there's grime and a build-up of dust, the front element of the lens, the rear screen. So for my cameras, I use an airbrush or one of these aerosol dusters to blow the surface debris away. I get some cotton buds. I get between the dials and stuff with the cotton buds and a bit of soapy water, and then some dry tissues to dry it all off. I get some moist lens tissues for the front element of the lens. I use these Zeiss tissues. Again, I blow away any debris first with air. And then I use that same moist tissue to clean the lens barrel. And then I'll get a small portable vacuum cleaner and get it into the corners of all my bags to get away all that dust and rubbish and debris that accumulates there. You know, anything from dust to crisps and bits of food. You wouldn't believe what gathers in the bottom of bags. So tip number 7, refresh your website. And if you don't have a personal website for your photography, maybe now is the time to do one. And for me, as well as the StreetSnappers.com site that you may well have seen, I've also got a personal website to showcase my work, and I'll pop a link below to it. If you've not yet got your own photography website, do look at it quite seriously now. I don't think it's ever been easier or cheaper to build a site from scratch. And we've got all these template-driven services that are really good, like SquareSpace, Format, SmugMug. I built my site using SquareSpace over this period of a weekend, and it's actually not difficult. If you do have a website already, spring clean it. Update the homepage, get your latest projects online. Make sure all your best and your most recent work is there, because it's out there for the world to see. You've now got the time to do the best you possibly can with it. So tip number 8, and just bear in mind, these are all the things that I'm doing with my time, and you can be doing them too. So tip number 8 is embrace social media. And okay, I accept that not everyone is a great fan of social media. My personal view is that it does have a role to play for street photographers, and in times like these, it can be a good way of staying connected and engaged with the outside world. So when it comes to street photography, Instagram is usually my first port of call. And if you're interested, my Instagram handle is StreetSnappers. On Instagram, it's a difficult one, but I think if you're quite careful about who you follow and you curate who you follow quite carefully, you can be looking at a stream of good, inspiring street photographers that gives you ideas and gives you motivation for your own work. Don't fall into the trap of obsessing about followers and likes. It doesn't matter. Just do your own thing. I'll talk more about this in a future video. Then there's Facebook. If you can manage to get beyond pictures of fingernails and people's lunches and all that nonsense, there are some really good street photography groups on Facebook that you can join. But like any form of social gathering, you get out what you put in. And if you really engage with some of these groups, you can get some real benefit from being part of a good, focused community. Tip number 9, revisit your post-production. Now, I'm one of these people who thinks when it comes to post-production image editing in street photography, less is more. But approaches change, techniques improve, and whilst I accept that post-production has a fairly limited role to play in street photography, it does have a role. And editing and file management tools are getting better all the time. So it's maybe time to learn something new. I've been using Photoshop and Lightroom for a long time, and I keep hearing about how good Capture One is. So that's on my to-do list for the next few weeks. I've got myself a trial of Capture One, and I will play with it and make the most of it and just see if I can make it work for me. Why not? I've got the time. Tip 10, learn a new skill. Every day is a school day. Photography is a fast-moving world, and there are always new skills to be learned. So, for example, for anyone who didn't grow up in the world of analog photography, I'd recommend going back to basics and learning some theoretical stuff. So for example, if you're a musician, you start with a theory. If you're an artist, you start with a theory. The same goes for scientists, lawyers, astronauts, just about everyone who takes their expertise seriously. They start with a theory. And I meet a lot of street photographers who pick up a digital camera and just start shooting, and they don't really understand light or composition or colour theory. Read some books, read some articles about photography, work on your weaknesses, work on the theory, go back to basics, maybe do a course, do an online theoretical course. It is time well spent. For me, for example, one of my skills gaps is the moving image. So I'm spending this time, I'm investing some time now into how to use video effectively, because I'm quite interested in how we can use video in street photography and audio for that matter. Tip number 11, if you haven't already done it, and if you don't currently do it, try analog photography, film photography. If you've never shot film before, or maybe you've got an old film camera lying around in the attic, get some film and start experimenting. There are now loads of places online who will send film through the post, and it's not expensive. If you haven't got an analog camera, just go on eBay. You'll find thousands of them, costing from a tenner to hundreds or even thousands of pounds. I'd go for something like a classic SLR from the 70s, like Pentax K1000, Nikon FM, Canon AE1, Minolta SRT 101. These are all great cameras. Or something simple and more compact that you just can't go wrong with a little Olympus trip. This has been the entry level into photography, the entry point in photography for so many people. If you're looking for some good value gear, by the way, some of this analog stuff, have a look at my new gear store and I'll pop the link below. Tip number 12, I like this one. Actually read some of the photography books that you've bought. And I'll confess now that I'm a photography book addict, and particularly street photography. And I'm a sucker for the latest body of work from the big names. And, you know, leading a busy life, I flick through these books and they go back on the shelf without having really given them much serious attention. Get into the narrative, look at the pictures, study them, get inspired, get into the photographer's head. Really analyse these books. They are fantastic. And on the subject of books, a quick plug for my two books, Mastering Street Photography and 52 Street Photography Assignments. I'll pop a link below for anybody who's interested in buying a copy of these. I love this one, number 13, do a lockdown project. So what do I mean by that? Most of what I would call street photography is candid photography shot in public places. And we don't have any public places to shoot in anymore, but we can still practice shooting and working on certain aspects of our photography. So why not use this opportunity to create a short documentary project about daily life as it happens in and around your home, capturing all those unguarded moments that make up family life. One of my workshop students, Santos Alvarez Leon, has worked particularly hard on this and has produced a short documentary film just based on this concept of lockdown. And she'll be releasing the film shortly on YouTube, and I will post a link to it in the future. But here are some stills that she's taken, and there will be a stills project I think she's working on, as well as a video project. But just look at this work. It's just so simple. And we've actually got something here that is, this is history. This is unique. And people are going to want to look at this in 10, 20, 50 years' time and think, wow, did that really happen? What was going on? So you can actually create a really good bit of documentary social history here. There's a good opportunity, and I would say don't waste it. I'm going to be doing something. If I can do something as half as good as what Santos has done, I'll be very happy. On the theme of projects, number 14, plan some projects for when you can get out shooting again. You might know that I'm a big fan. I'm passionate about using projects in street photography. And let's look on the bright side and assume that we can be out shooting again by the summer. Rather than just wander off onto the streets randomly shooting away, wouldn't it be great if we all went out there with some projects that we could really get stuck into and we could hit the ground running? Well, now's the time to start planning, thinking about those projects, jotting down some ideas, sketching them out, just bringing the ideas to life, work them up into firm plans. If you're new to the idea of projects, please do watch my recent video about street photography projects, which might give you a little bit of an inspirational kick. Tip number 15, get to grips with your gear. There's now no excuse. How often do you buy a new piece of kit, a nice new shiny camera, and say to yourself, I'll read the manual later? I'm as guilty as anyone of this. And I think that many of us don't exploit the full potential of our gear because we don't read the manual. I've got a drawer full of manuals that have never been opened. Maybe it's a photographer thing, maybe it's a guy thing, I don't know, but I need to get to grips with those manuals. And I've now started to do it. I've got them out of the drawer, I've got them ready. So when I'm out there using my gear again, in anger, I will know it inside out, and I will be able to exploit its potential, I think, much more effectively. Number 16, enter competitions. There are lots of street photography competitions around. Okay, if you're not careful, you could spend lots of money on entry fees alone. And I do think that some of these competitions they can be a rip-off, and they're purely a money-making exercise for the organisers. On the other hand, others are more altruistic and what I would call genuine competitions. Generally, I think if you avoid anything with high interest fees, you should be okay. And it is worth a try. You just never know what might happen. So search online, find some street photography competitions, don't splash out loads of cash on entry fees, give them a go, see what happens. Number 17, consider stock photography. If you're one of those photographers who has many thousands of images tucked away on hard drives, there could well be a market for some of those images via the stock libraries. Alamy, for example. And okay, I accept that stock has had a bad press in recent years. Oversupply has gone stratospheric, causing prices to plummet, but there is still a market there, particularly if you have something niche. And that's the key to making this work. The nicher, the better. It's all about the numbers game. And if you've got high stock levels with agencies, this might just work for you, particularly if those images are niche. I know plenty of photographers who have a nice little monthly income from their online image library sales. And this is never going to make you rich. But believe me, it's really satisfying when that check comes in or you see that payment coming into your bank account And it might be for £20, it might be $50, it could be £1,000. It's all about the numbers game. You get enough images on there, they will sell. Tip number 18, start a critique circle. I feel quite passionately about critique, and it's an essential part of how we develop as photographers, and good critique really can be hard to come by, and people are either too kind or the complete opposite in the form of online trolls. So we show images to our friends, our colleagues, and they're gushing about them. Oh, that's awesome, fantastic, wow, what a great picture. Even if it's not, this isn't helpful. So why not start your own critique circle? Get together a small group of friends, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 people, but they all share the common interest in street photography, and organise an online critique session. This is so easily done now using Skype or Facebook or even WhatsApp. Zoom is the one that's taken off, isn't it, at the moment? It's almost as good as being in the same room with other people. But before you start, agree a structure. Critique is much more efficient and effective if there's a consistent approach applied to each image, and you're looking at them with a kind of common strategy almost. So critique, really important. Tip number 19, explore the wider world of street photography. Dig deep, go on the web. There's a wealth of information and knowledge out there. YouTube videos, podcasts, online magazines, discussion forums, blogs. Dig deep into the archives, go back years, look at some of the stuff that was written 5 years ago or more about street photography. You'll find some really interesting stuff that you might otherwise have overlooked, but now you've got the time to do it. So we're almost there, and I've left the best, I think, till last. So tip number 20 is develop your voice. Like singers, photographers have voices, and we need to make sure our voice is clear and distinctive in the same way that you could distinguish, say, Elvis Costello from Frank Sinatra. Our voice plays a key role in defining our style as a photographer, and it's something we should actively work on and think about, but we rarely do. Why? Because we haven't got time. We've now got time. Try starting with the end point. How do you see yourself as a photographer in 10, 20, 50 years' time? What will your body of work look like? What's your contribution to the world of street photography? What's your ambition? What do you aspire to? What's your legacy? A good exercise is to imagine that in front of you is a book of your life's work. What will that book look like? What will the images look like? What will they tell you? How will they represent your legacy? Use these thoughts to frame your aspirations. Now is the starting point. This is the start of finding your voice. If it's not something you've yet thought of, now start to think about it. Maybe start to think about your own preferred approach to street photography. Are you one of these shooters who is maybe motivated by capturing the moment? Are you a Winogrand or a Meyerowitz? Are you a light chaser? Are you more interested in the aesthetic, like Saul Leiter, Van Ho? Are you a storyteller? Is there a strong narrative to your work? Do you see yourself more as a documentary street photographer? Martin Parr, for example, I mean, in a certain sense, he's probably a combination of all three, but there's a great social documentary theme running through his images. He's a storyteller. So be true to what drives you and work towards an approach that works for you. So try to find a voice, a style that you can apply consistently to your street photography. and one which could ultimately be recognised as yours. This is yours. This is his work. This might all sound very aspirational, but the more you think about it, the more effective you'll be. Start to think about it now. Use this time to think very deeply about where you're going with this. So there you have it. 20 things that you can do to ensure that when you emerge from this dreadful situation, you will be a fitter, stronger, and maybe more rounded, more skilled street photographer in a good position to bounce back in style. We've got a great window of opportunity here. Make the most of it. So that's just about it for now. I hope you found this video useful, and if you have any questions or comments, just pop them in the box below and I'll do my best to answer them. As always, it would be really good if you could click like for this video, or unlike even if you didn't like it. Hit the little bell below to get notifications of new videos, and please subscribe to the channel. There's lots more to come over the next few weeks, so do stay tuned. Thanks again. Please stay safe out there. Stay indoors, do the social distancing, and it'll be great to catch up with you again next time. Bye for now.